Hey everybody, peace family. You're tuned in to the Diva and the Unk, mastering voice and vision in leadership.
And I'm Munifa Harris, your diva in flow, helping you unlock the power of presence and voice.
And I'm
And I'm
Diva,
Diva, aka everybody's on.
here to build conscious culture and sales that feel like truth.
Every episode, we blend soul and strategy to amplify your leadership.
Help you move through life with purpose, clarity, and real alignment.
That's right. So here we go. Buckle up. Are you ready to turn up the resonance?
Let's
Get it.
We need music there.
yeah, cue the music. Gotcha. All right, folks, let's get into segment one. Segment one is our recap from last week. Last week's episode was knowing what you want, very important in the process of self-development. It's having some idea of what you want, and we'll start with Monifa with this week's recap.
Yeah, so last week we worked on just knowing how to connect into your power to make an impact on your speaking. You know, we talked a lot about love and devotion and what it takes to really know I guess what it takes to really be tuned into the ultimate mission. Do you understand the assignment? That was a little bit of what we're talking about, of knowing what you want, because you declare the assignment, right? And so that was, we were working on understanding with the mindset, how to help people to understand where you are with what you want and how we are telling each other who we are and helping us tune into our natural ability to be on purpose. So that was a little bit about last week.
Fantastic. And also during this time in this segment, we'll talk about some of the things that are happening. Really, we'll talk about some of the things that are happening in the world. We're at war. Many folks think it'll be the World War III. But we can't be concerned with that. We can't pay too much attention to that. And yet it does impact us, but our energy is required for it to continue at the level it continues at. If we don't give it the energy, then it'll die down. And I just want everyone to realize that, some things we can't control. We can control where we're putting our energy. And at this time in the world, it's really important that we focus our energy on ourselves and what we're truly trying, the life we're truly trying to live.
Right. It's at these really crucial times when people don't have the choices you do that we start to make better choices for ourselves. We want to really have that be the best possible level of involvement in life and participation in what's available for us. So that if we are the people that are called to do something more, that we get something more done, right? We have to be caretakers of our time and resources if we're going to lend those to others. We have to be caretakers of our vision and our mission if we're going to build one big enough that will impact the people that need it at such a high level. And so the more that we get ingrained into this idea that we are at war, with each other, that society is in, shambles and all of this kind of thing. The more we get ingrained to that, we're getting entrained to their vision of the world and the people that are creating these things. And so we have to be really solid in what we want and why we're here in order for us to make that shift into what are we building so that we can help everybody else, right? So yeah, the more we can focus on that, the more we can help others and the more that we can help turn that energy into another form of the world that we want to live in. Because I know most of us are not interested in being at war for years at a time or in constant war across the planet. And so we have to make our energy more known and more present in the world in order for that to make the final shift. And these are, I feel, the depth throes of this idea that this is the way to move forward. But until we have rebalanced that within ourselves, it won't show up on the world stage.
Yeah, we really have to be careful. You know, they put these things out there. You know, I don't know. It's all propaganda. But now they have this, like the gorilla versus 100 men. You know, they're
Um,
really big now on
oh,
100 Mexicans versus 100 blacks and things like that. And why aren't the blacks supporting the Mexicans in their fight for just decency and fairness? And that's all part of the scheme. In order to defeat us, they must divide us. And the more we feed into these division tactics, this propaganda machine, keep it up. And we've got to move above those things that they're trying to get us fixated on. I believe the war, this, this campaign of versus and men versus women, and, you know, Latins versus African American, Afro Americans, copper colored Americans, indigenous people versus, you know, other people who are claiming they're indigenous. I mean, this is all tactics to separate us. And we really, really have to um, take measure and take stock within ourselves to say, you know, I'm not going to feed into that. I believe in the brotherhood of who we are as one. And the only way to really get there is to really get within yourself to figure out who you are and what's really important to you. And so, any word on that? Last word on
Absolutely.
that one?
I mean, it's true. Like we're all taught that in order to honor who we are, we have to separate ourselves from others. And I think the biggest lessons of this time, which we're talking a little bit about later in the show, we're going to talk a little bit about astrology, but I think the biggest essence that we must learn to integrate during this time to have any chance of moving forward into what we can fully create in this lifetime is that we do it together. We go, we live, we die, we do it together. This is the any ideas that that what your skin looks like, what your culture is separating you from somebody else's circumstance, somebody else's way of being. It's just
Somebody else's part in what you have to create. We're all
yeah,
here to create, and we're here
yeah.
together to create together.
We're
So
here together to
really
create
have to
together.
start
That is the
being in.
absolute truth.
yeah.
All right, moving on to segment two, Monifa's moment of transition, where the very talented Monifa will give you guys some tips on whether it's breathing, whether it's whatever technique she's come up with to help us get through our days and get through our moments in life. It's all you, Mo.
Changing sequence. All right, so so we like to call this the vocal power play with moi, Monifa, your diva in charge. All right, and so what we are doing is we're tapping into those things that really help us understand the voice and therefore work with it so that we can create and amplify what we're here to do in the world. So, first step in this segment is about is about how are we creating change in a room, right? So the first step here is to tune in. You have to tune in to the room in order to be connected to the room, right? I think this is one of those things that it would feel like, yeah, that of course I would do that. But when we're online, especially when we're on video, we're on camera, we're just kind of in our own little space and we're just like, we're not connecting to the room. And the truth is, there, however many people come behind the first one, two, three, all of that energy is going to show up for you to be present for when you're doing the initial recording, the initial presentation. And it's the same thing when you hit the stage. There's an energy of the people that are there that are ready to receive your voice and your message that you can tune into. So the first step to even learning how to do that is through your breath. So you'll notice in my voice series on the channel Voice Lessons series that the first step is always to breathe out in this camp. So we breathe all the way out. And we're just thinking through the perineum, through the floor, into the earth with our imaginations, right? Doesn't have to be pristine, but if you don't know what the perineum is, it's between the two places you use to go to the bathroom. So right down the middle, the center of the body, through into the floor, through the floor, into the earth. And just imagine that just further than you can see, all right, downward. And it just gives us this anchoring. And we breathe in from the earth and just in that intention, breathing in from the earth, it's going to automatically give you a grounding. Every time I do it, I just get clear in what I want to say and what my voice sounds like. So it's crucial for any true communication. We talked a little bit last time about the time and space that we're in to make an impact. And this is part of that. You have to tune into the where you are and in the now moment. Okay. So the connecting is the second step. So the connecting is about how are we feeling that? So when we breathe all the way out, when we're breathing back in below the belly button into lower belly, you'll feel something. Okay, whether that's just your muscles moving, or if you are really attuned to your body, you're going to start feeling maybe some warmth movement or some level of expansion and shift. And whatever that energy is, we want to start feeling that. A lot of people actually already know how to do this. If you've done any kind of acting training, if you've done any kind of like sports and sitting like in a stance where you have to have a stance to get ready for like what do you call it when you do the beginning of football? And and you're like, you know that one?
I do. It's not called that.
They don't call it the hut.
No, they don't call it that. So it's actually, we called it the action stance, where you're slightly bent at the knee, chest up, shoulders up, and we call it the fundamental football position. But it's a sports position. It's the ready position that you see in all sports.
Exactly. It's the ready position. It's always the starting, like in ballet, it's first position, right? There's positions where you start. And what they're created for is for like the embodiment of what movement feels like in the activity. So there's even like for singing, there's like the correct stance if you're going by all the metrics, right? But really what that stance is like activating the body for movement, right? So if you have your feet positioned in a certain way and you know you got to push the other person out of the way, you're going to be kind of slightly forward with all the power of your hips available. So it looks like a football stance, right? If you're in ballet, what you want is that center of gravity to be towards the middle of the body and that you can like do floaty, beautiful movements, right? So that's going to look like a plie or like a first position, right? Sorry, plie is the actual movement, but it starts, from what I remember, in first position. So it just gives you the form of which, how are you holding yourself in that structure? And that gives you the form of how your body is feeling. And acting, what they'll do is they'll like shake and they're going to do a little kind of warm up movements, maybe even a la exercise, warmed up to exercise, that kind of thing, because they want to be able to feel every bit of their body. That's how you create presence on stage. Okay. So it's an energetic thing, but more than anything, it's a felt thing. How do I know I have presence? Well, you got to be able to feel your body. You got to connect to your body, and you have to be able to connect at the same time that you're doing the thing. So that's something you got to practice. That's why we have my work, right? All right. Third step, create the feeling that you want to have and transmit in the room. So how do you want your audience to feel when they're leaving? We talked a little bit about that last week, right? And you get to feel it first. Like if you can't feel it, they won't feel it, right? And I don't care. I've said this over and over again, but I don't care how many words you get right in your perfectly grammared statement. If you aren't feeling anything, nobody will remember. They might be engaged with the words for the time, but they're not going to leave there remembering how you made them feel because you didn't make them feel that much. And that's the truth of it. So you hold the feeling, you get in touch with what that feeling is, you bring it out to the rest of your body, and then you engage, right? So that is your typical power play for the week. We're going to find music for these transitions, sure.
Power play.
I like it.
All right, moving on to segment 3. Segment 3 is nieces, nephews. Come over here. Let me holler at you. All right, so my segment sort of piggybacks on some of the things Monifa talked about in the 3 steps to being in yourself fully, because that's literally what that is. And so for the younger generation, you know, it's weird that you guys find it hard to communicate with one another because of the feeling that you get when you have to be in what can be a confrontational moment. Okay, I remember when I was a teenager, you know, I used to get all of these funny feelings inside when you look somebody in their eyes. You know, as a young man, we were always taught to look people in their eyes. You know, and I see that for a lot of people, it makes them uncomfortable, especially young people. It takes them a little while to get used to that. But what I would tell a young person is the techniques that you just learned from Monifa, the most important part of those techniques is feeling and breathing into what you're feeling. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to even talk with nervousness in your voice because in that moment, you're present. Everything about you is engaged in that moment and your body is responding to it. And it's important to breathe moments, just so that you can stay aligned and not get out of control of your emotions. It's very important. I'm a very quick thinker. Like when someone says something to me, my mind has already created this answer from almost instant. Whereas some people require that moment to think, you know, to come up with what they want to say, informative words that you would be understanding. And even for those people, it's way more important for you to breathe. And it's way more important for the person like myself to be more patient with the person who's in a process. And Monifa is a momentary, takes her moments to get to her thought process to convey the words that she really wants to say. And it's not about learning patience, it's about being in the moment with that person and letting that person have their moment to be in. And as a young person, that's kind of hard to do. We're very trapped in what we want to say as opposed to hearing what is said. You know, I learned very early in sales and marketing, first to understand before being understood. So, your uncle moment for this week is take a chill pill, relax. Make sure you understand the person before you look to be understood.
That's it. That's it. To me, that's part of the connecting in. Connecting to me, you know, when you can feel like the hard part for me and for a lot of people in those moments is that there's so much energy moving through them that they get lost, you know, and they get into their head, and then it's just self-criticism that's running the game. But part of that is to like stop reflecting to your own head and start listening, start connecting to what's happening in the moment and in the audience and the people that you, and that's a form of listening, even though like, you know, a lot of people say go out amongst the audience, ask a few questions about, you know, what brought people to the, you know, they're going to tell you to literally tune in and listen to what people are there for. And you can do it energetically as well. You can be in that moment. And I would always say, and yes, and, right? Like neither of these are wrong. It's just that you don't get up there and then just stop listening because they're giving you feedback in real time, right? So if it's making you nervous, then we're not necessarily thinking about what's gonna serve other people. We're thinking more about how are we looking? What do we, you know? And so what we want to do is tune into like how can I serve these people that like how tune in or to what I'm going to share already, and then how am I going to move forward from there? And it'll make you a better communicator. You know, what Daryl's saying, it'll make you a better communicator. People will listen to you more because you listen first, because it does give you that people the feeling that you care, you know? So out of that.
Well said. Well said. As we move into segment 4, the mailbag, and I am to understand that we have a question from one of your clients this week.
That's right, Daryl. We have a question from one of my clients. So this came in the email this week, and I was like, oh, I wish I could put this, had like thousands of people to say this to. So the question that came in was, how do I know that I'm making progress in my business? And it came up because they'd been working on their website and they'd been working on their freebie and their offering. They've been working on what they want to share in their webinars and their information. And they've been doing a great job of just making a very good representation of what they want to share with people and what they want to offer as a business. And they feel like they've put a lot of effort in, but of course, you put all that effort in, and immediately you're like, why don't I have everybody looking at me? Right? It's a lot of work to put all that together. It's a lot of thinking and distilling what's true for you, right? Um, and the reality is that it's really hard to track progress in a solo business. Any kind of coaching, any kind of personal service, any kind of products of passion, any kind of art creation. These are not the same things as going out and saying, I've got shiny pennies. I'll shine any penny you want for a penny, right? Like it's not the same thing. That's a service. But then like if it's the same thing as if I have, diamond rings for sale, right? I can show you a diamond ring. Either you want it or you don't, right? I can make it sound good. It's from Ethiopia, the darkest bloods, right? Like I can make it sound good, but generally it's going to be like, yeah, I was looking for a diamond ring. I like that one. I'm going to get it. It's much easier and it doesn't affect your emotions as much. When your emotions and your passion and what you really care about are on the line, it's like a whole different level. Am I right? So when that gets to that like crazy nervous energy and you get that crazy procrastination level when you've like gotten 1,000 things done for other people who paid you way less than a business will pay you, like you built whole people's entire industries and then you can't sit down and do it for yourself. That's not that you can't do it. It's not even that you don't want to do it. It's that it's harder to do what you care about, right? There's more on the line. It's an ego death when you fail at something you care about.
Judgment.
Yeah. So you have to support yourself at a whole nother level to do something born of passion. So when you're in a solo business and you're looking for those cues that, oh, people like me, ooh, because it's your ideas, your passion, it's what you value. And like when you hear crickets, it feels like an indictment, right? And it just doesn't work that way, right? There's plenty of that front edge of business where you just aren't going to get the feedback. And while some people are like clicking and they may not be clicking through the cart, but they're clicking and then you're kind of starting to see these numerical changes. You don't necessarily get that with like video content. Like people aren't really trying to tell you that they're watching unless they bought in already, right? And so you can't really determine analytics either. So what are we looking at? What are we looking at? We're looking at how many people have we actually had the conversation with? So how many people have you personally, with your mouth, told somebody else with another mouth?
You call it word of mouth. I mean, it is actually called Word of mouth.
And the first part is just being able to say it in a coherent fashion where they have a clear idea. It doesn't have to be clear, it just has to have a sense of what you're due and how you can help somebody. And so, what you're really working at in the beginning, and those conversations are going to hone all the other stuff you work on anyway. So, I'm always like, yeah, websites are cool, but have you talked to anybody yet? Right? Because whatever you build has to be built on how people hear and respond to what you have to say. Right? And so, even if they're not a client yet, you still want to start getting feedback. Do you even understand what I'm saying? Have you heard a voice? Have you heard of voice toning? Have you heard like I have to go down the list, right? And I have to kind of enter into wherever they understand it, which makes front edge marketing a little complicated for me. But that's where you start. And then a true conversation doesn't happen until you've heard the response. Actually, that sounds really interesting. Actually, I do have a friend, Sarah, who's been working on this for a long time, and that might actually help her, right? Where they can actually pinpoint how it can work with somebody who's like alive, either themselves or somebody else, right? That is how you tell how many of those conversations where somebody got it and they have a reference point and they can give you feedback. Well, Sarah's going through it this way and she's running into these problems, and probably if there was something like this, that she would be all forward. Right now, you're starting to hear, how do I help people know that I can help them? And that's the trick. The more of those conversations you have, the better your chances are that you're getting your next client. And the hard thing about a solo business is that even if you have a ton of clients, you don't know when your next client's coming until you have more conversations. Okay. So even in the analytics, like it falls down sometimes with solopreneur numbers because there's not enough people, right? So you can't really predict anything out of those numbers until you get some higher numbers. And that just takes time, right? So in the beginning, it's just the only way you can keep track of your progress is by having more conversations. And Daryl knows all about that. He knows about that number game out in the streets.
It's so vital, especially for folks who are starting their own business, that
that
you're
you're
tying.
tying that into a passion. It's
And I say it's important to be a passion, and your goal can't be to make money. And I know it sounds crazy, but if your goal is to make money, then you're only going to base your progress on how much money you're making, right? Whereas your goal should be how many people can you help with what you're doing. Even if you're only making scarves and you live in California where they have a 3-month window for using scarves, it's the way you feel about that scarf and how it impacts you in those 3 months that you're really selling to folks. The way you feel about it really plants the seed on how someone else is going to feel. One of my core philosophies in sales and marketing is sales is an exchange of energy. Money is energy. Products are energy. The way you feel about the product is the energy that you're literally marketing to sell. Think about your best experiences when a salesman was involved. The way he felt about it, not the way he felt about the way you felt, the way he felt about helping you, the way he felt about this being a good fit for you based on the questions he asks. Even they're subconscious in so many ways, but now when you're able to express through him asking you what your needs are or what problems you're having, and then coming up with a solution after seeking first what you need, then he can be understood in his recommendation of the product that he represents. So it's so vital for folks who are engaging in stepping out and working with something that they love to work with and bringing that energy. It's the energy about the way you feel about it that's going to get the product moving. Not necessarily.
I love that. Yeah, I think the most like kind of dynamic ways of showing up for my business and events is that feeling of generosity. Like I just, because I know I'm giving away like the whole house. Like even in some of these videos, I'm like, this is the whole house. You might not realize the whole house is here, but this is the whole house. Like if you can really work the information that I've already given out, that it is, I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you. Yeah. But there's just faster ways of working where you're getting immediate feedback with a guide and a coach, right? So that's what makes the biggest shift the fastest. But that doesn't mean it's not available to you, right? And so when you're living in this, oh, I'm just being super generous, then people tend to respond, right? They're like, wow, this is amazing. Wow, you're so, and they have a gratitude already. And it's just a really good place to start. It's like, yeah, no, I'm really here to serve. I'm really here to support you. It's not that I can only do so much when I only have so much time and I have to live, but I'm doing my best to support you in this moment. That's the energy you want to show up with. Yeah. Um, so yay. So what's next? What do we got next?
Yeah, so this week's topic. This week's topic, as we mentioned earlier in the show, is science versus astrology.
Science versus astrology.
Now, I would probably, this is going to sound weird to people, I would probably lean toward the astrology growing up. If we're looking at me being driven by the way I felt,
You know, and some scientific result, you know. So for me, I was always interested in astrology growing up, not so much interested in science. They were cutting frogs open. They were doing periodic tables, which had me confused from day one. So I didn't really lean towards science growing up. Um, and I wasn't really a woo-woo person either, you know. But in that day and age of the 80s, like every day, they did horoscopes, little one-liners about horoscopes on the radio, and everybody tuned in. Those segments across all cultures are giant segments. The astrology segments are huge in radio, especially in the Latin world as well. So I would say I got into science when science started proving the woo-woo stuff, things like epigenetics, things like quantum physics. I don't even know physics, but quantum physics makes way more sense, you know. Um, so from that perspective, I've learned to have more respect for science, especially science, and I understand why I didn't like science, because science was something that they had given us and said it was a fact. Okay, science didn't account for supernatural things happening. It couldn't account for it, and I always believed in the supernatural. So that's the reason why I wasn't really a science person, because it discounted the things that I felt could happen. We don't see them every day, but we have accounts of miracles our entire lives. And so science doesn't account for that. But now I think science does account for it, because it's the missing part of science. It's the part of science that's been restricted for us, to understand and to even be mainstream. There's a lot of scientific studies that happen that prove the existence of free energy. They prove the existence of an ether. They prove the existence of spirit, you know, energy that can't be explained, can be now explained through science. And I think the merger of science and astrology is happening right before our eyes. it's really incredible. And it's made me more interested in science than I've ever been before. So this day and age that we're living in, this 21st century, for those of us who came through the 70s and the 80s, this time is absolutely fabulous. There's so much more information. It's like getting another lease on life to continuously continue to learn and to know more, um, even about where we are. You know, we grew up with a view of a globe Earth. Well, science is proving that having a globe Earth is technically correct, but our planet being a vortex and understanding vortexes with planes of inertia makes a lot more sense. And science is proving that. So science is proving the woo-woo, and woo-woo has always been able to keep people's minds open to possibilities, which is probably why I was woo-woo, because I always wanted to keep my mind open to any and all possibilities. So,
Yay science and yay astrology.
Daryl can't pick a side. He always tells me that I can't pick a side. But I can't. I picked a side. Maybe he just doesn't like the side I picked. Anyways, when I was growing up, um, my family was really into education. We all were expected to get degrees. There was no one left behind. Like it was not a suggestion in my family. You're going to get a degree. And if you were a good child, you get a doctorate. Like that, you're going to get a master's and a doctorate. That was just one of those things that they expected. And so I had a lot of doctors in our family. We have like nurses, doctor, engineer, like what's the other one? Finance, financials, like what is that? I forget what that's called when you get like one certification for company accounting. But
CPA.
CPA, that's what it is. Yeah, so stuff like that. But you're going to be an expert in your field of service. You're going to be an expert in your field of service. That's just the expectation. My mom from Jamaica, my dad from Guyana. It was one of those things that it was just expected, right? I grew up pre-med. I wanted to be a pediatrician. So when I went to school, I was pre-med for 2.5 years to fulfill a prophecy, right? And so when I wasn't, I was in church, I wasn't really worried about external beliefs and systems until I graduated. And then I started gaining all this information from a lot of different areas, information about business, information about financial systems and economics, and information about astrology of all things. I started listening to this amazing lady on Periscope, which is how Twitter acquired their video feature, right?
X.
X. Oh, yes, things have changed, obviously. But all of these things were happening, and that's when I found this amazing lady. And it was the understanding that she was using the moon transits to help us understand and navigate what's coming up for us. And for her, she was a Cancerian. She was Cancer Sun. And I am a Cancerian. I'm Cancer Sun and Moon and Scorpio rising. And if anybody knows astrology, that's all water, which means that we can be very emotional. But more than that, we're ruled by the moon, which is also Daryl, by the way. What are you doing? Remember? Do you remember your sign?
Of course, I remember this because I have it written down.
You have it written. He has like a whole notebook now, which he did not have before. I was the one keeping track of all the records. Yeah. So Pisces Sun and Cancer Moon.
Cancer moon, Aries rising.
Aries rising. There you go. So yeah, so again, a lot of water energy up in this piece, right? And it's this, what I understood from watching her was that I was getting these feelings in my body based on the moon cycle. And anybody knows, like, water is primarily ruled by moon because Cancer is is the cardinal sign of water, of a water element. And I have two. I have one for my emotions and one for my identity. So identity is sun and emotions is moon. So all of that is happening. And like every time the moon changes, I feel different, right? So no wonder I have a hard time tracking things. Back then it was so much a point of shame for me. And like not being able to just do what I had to do and not having to deal with like big emotions. And so I would stuff them. I would stuff them, which is where I was when Daryl found me. Was like I had just filled up. Like that was all the emotions I was going to be able to stuff. And I started getting super anxious, super anxiety. I was also like kind of suppressing, I think, my empathic nature, my ability to read energy. So I wasn't really understanding that I was getting this information on an energetic level as well. And so trying to get rid of it instead of filter it, I just get it more and more weighed down with it, right? And so that's what I learned. That's not a good idea. Don't suppress your emotions, especially if you're a water sign, because you will kill yourself.
It's a big problem with a lot of people
Yeah.
because they don't understand how cycles in the stars affect their emotions. And it goes for men as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there are just things that there's an answer for that we felt like we had no control. Understanding who you are in the zodiac and how those things impact you here on this planet is vital. I mean, this is ancient information. This is what the ancients believed. This is how they determined how you were going to live your life, what challenges you were being required to have to even be a man or to be a woman in the tribe.
So true. And yeah, but that's when I started realizing, okay, I might not believe this in a scientific way, but something is going on here, right? Like something is happening. There's this is like too many coincidences happening with this information. So I started studying. I started figuring out what meant what. It took a while because at the same time as I'm picking up on the Western chart, I'm starting to delve into the other ones because I want to know, like, how does this work? How does this even happen? And why are there so many? So now I'm like looking at all the different systems. I'm like looking at Chinese astrology and Vedic astrology and Mayan, I forget what it's Tolkien astrology and like all this kind of stuff. And then I just realized how much of it correlates to each other, how much of it like is a missing piece for even the other versions. It's so fun. And and I'm like, there's no way you find this much correlation in concept unless there's an underlying truth. Like that's just scientific by itself. I know that as a scientist. I know that as a scientific thinker. You don't like this. This is too much coincidence, right? That's not that much happening. Is like you would not be a good scientist if you found that much correlation and you didn't investigate. Like that would, yeah. I don't know who anyways, but I'm sure there's plenty of you that would argue with me. Feel free to do so in the comments. So, but like that's when I knew I was like, there's something more here. And you don't tell me that there's thousands and thousands of years of wisdom keepers coming up with the same idea and that it's so off base that you just should ignore it completely. Like that's insanity to me. But that's what we've done. We've made it a non-science, which is just ridiculous. People have been studying patterns of the sky for thousands of years, and that's not enough history and research for you. Like it's crazy the way we undercut other people's forms of intelligence
It's
and
funny because
genius.
religion calls it New Age.
I know.
It is so much older than religion.
It's
I
like,
mean, not even by like a couple hundred years. We're talking thousands of years older than religion. Astrology is.
It's so old.
Astrology charted how you ate. You couldn't plant.
Like literally your farmers would be lost without
harvest.
astrology. Like this is why I use Western astrology, even though it's not
people on the planet.
astronomically accurate, right? Because we are still living in the cycle of the earth. Who cares what's going on in the sky if you can't eat today, right? And the reality is that, we transcend and include.
The river was going to flood.
We transcend and include, right? But there are reasons why we plant at a certain time at the certain moon. There's a reason why we harvest at a certain time at a certain moon. And while they may be variances depending upon where you are on the planet, the cycle is the same. And so if you're not paying attention to what it takes to create something in this world, the cycle, it's what I call the cycle of creation, right? Like I even went and got a certificate in period coaching because what I knew about period coaching is that it's the original cycle of human creation. Like you aren't here without a period, right? So I know how important knowing and understanding a cycle is. Of course, I'm going to go and study a period cycle. It makes whole freaking human beings who each human being is a universe unto themselves. So what, like people are, I'm not trying to convince anybody, and yet I just feel like these things are obvious if you're interested in what's true. And that's something that Daryl and I have been in continuous pursuit of what's true.
Well, you have to keep an open mind. If you've allowed, let's just keep it there, if you've allowed religion and tradition to close your mind, then everything we're saying to you is probably offensive. It's probably something you're not even listening.
Are we talking to us? I don't know.
And in that case, you're probably family. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it.
Nah, we love you, even though we don't understand how you think. The
truth is that this information, like who determined an equinox? What watch did they use to figure out the day when it was equal sun and equal night? Whose watch did they use?
Now I got to talk about this because I have a client that's in Ecuador. Remind me again what Ecuador is named after? What is it?
Equator.
The equator. Guess what they did for solstice? They went to the local churches, not local, well, they're all local, right? But they went to the ones that were built by like early churches, like the early churches. So they were built by the early inhabitants of the cities, which did not just know church architecture, they knew Mayan architecture. And so what they did is they put the pulpit in a place that would be lit up by the sun on solstice. Still works, right? It still works. And like there's no science involved. Like we really like I just whatever. I'm gonna move on. I don't know. Are you maybe have more to say? I feel like I think we should listen to our ancestors. If only because of everything that they sacrificed for us to be able to build on the land that we are currently eating on.
And if that's not good enough, their track record is impeccable. You don't even understand.
Like the sun is still hitting the right place.
Where did this information come from?
Like it's so incredible.
They 100 out of 100 with their, well, not the Mayan calendar, but they were that Mayan calendar.
And do you know that was
a way that we don't understand it to be correct?
The 2012 thing was completely misinterpreted. I literally just listened to somebody of the tradition who has a lineage of caretakers of wisdom from that. They are in Guatemala, right? So, like, and we just like they didn't get it wrong. We were too stupid to understand because the calendar was complicated. And they didn't realize that they were talking about the shift in the age and the end of an age. They thought about the end of humanity or something to this effect. So that wasn't their mistake. That was a misinterpretation by a culture that didn't understand the level of wisdom at hand.
Probably. I mean, and we'll wrap this up. It took Terrence Howard in 2024 to unlock one of the most ancient symbols ever seen on the flower of life has been around long before anything we would call technology was technology. And the greatest minds in history played with that symbol. Pythagoras, Michelangelo, the greatest minds in history tried to unlock the secrets. And it took this man to render it in a 3D model to really understand the depth of that symbol. So, like I said, our ancients are about 1,000% with information. It's undeniable. We're only creating science today to confirm what they knew.
We just caught up to be able to understand what they've
We're just
known
catching.
for thousands of years, right?
You know?
Like, it's amazing to me, like how quick we are to dismiss this level of understanding, because it doesn't align to something that somebody recently told us with, like, within the last couple of decades, and then they're changing their mind. Like, everybody's changing their mind. Catholicism, like everybody. Everybody has some form of universal consciousness now within their. I don't care who you are, unless you're some backwoods church that like has ruled out anything quantum related. That's like kind of like has bars on the doors. No quantum physics here. It has to be pretty strong because there's just no way, because it is spirituality. The concept is what spirit is. It's the complete definition of spirit. So yeah, if you can ignore that, then you're strong. You are strong.
We have to get rid of the dogmas. We have to get rid of taboos. We have to let go of tradition. We have to approach this period of time that we're in with open minds, that anything is possible. And now science can prove it. That is the beauty of where we are today. That now that belief that anything is possible is correct.
Yeah.
And science can prove it.
Yeah.
All right.
I love it.
So,
into it.
Segment 6, From Here to There. It's the segment where we recap today's show. And we get you prepared for what's happening next week. You want to tell us what you thought about today's show?
Well, I liked it. I thought it was pretty cohesive. I think it was a mixture of talking about how we're moving forward and what we're doing and bringing people with us. It was a conversation about what it takes to tap into the truth of who we are and what can tell us more about how we move forward. So I like talking about in that fashion, and then yeah, I think one thing that we didn't quite get to actually was that astrology tells us so much about who we are as humanity and as ourselves, that you don't have to believe everything it tells you, but it's going to make you ask the right questions to find out what's really true for you based on you and your experience, right? And so what I think can be really powerful is if you tap into it to help you build what you're building. It's something that I do as a service, and it's something that I think can really help you anchor in the truth of the structure that you want to build as a business, instead of just coming to some archetype that's going to just turn into another job, which is basically what you have to do to make money. Right?
There's a famous quote that says, millionaires don't follow astrology, billionaires do.
Billionaires. I think, a little bit of my soapbox about that is that it's not about, that's really, to me, that's about planning. And nobody likes to plan. Like, that's the thing, right? but preparation and understanding of cycles, that is what planning is. And it's not about fixing you to a spot that's so strict that you cannot get out of it, including your identity. It's about understanding the components of which you have to play with to create something that's your own. And so, yeah, I think just letting it be a way of saying, well, thousands of years, the same archetypes, they keep repeating these sequences of yin yang and I Ching. I Ching is like just a combination of zeros and ones, folks. That's what the original zero and one was, the I Ching. And it's literally called the Book of Changes if you're looking at that information. And we've converted it into an understanding of the DNA structure, which Chinese medicine already did. But, you know, we got to turn it into something that we can understand as a Western culture. So, anyways, that's what I love the Gene Keys for, is just helping us making those connections between what we understand as science and what has been ancient knowledge for 1,000 years. So, when you're ready to go deeper, always go back to the original. Otherwise, you don't know what kind of terrain you're playing in. You could just be messing it all up and thinking it's the end of the world when it's 2012. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, today's episode was informative.
Yeah.
I like the way we're doing the segments. I really do. I do like structure.
It's different when you get to make it for yourself. That's what I tell my creatives. They always want like free reign. But if you create your own parameters, which is the whole point of Oman's method, so go watch the voice lessons. If when you can understand the parameters of which you're working with, now like the ability to create is infinite. You get to surprise yourself with beauty constantly when you work within the parameters that you've chosen.
So, there's nothing wrong with going to go look at how someone else does it and then tailoring it to fit you, to fit how you want to do it.
Exactly.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can make it our own. And that's it for today. Monica?
Yeah, so a little bit about how we want to move forward. We want your feedback. So like, if you send in a question, if you send in something for comments, if you wanted to talk more, any specific thing, what do I use astrology for? How am I applying to my life? What are the benefits of that? Or, how can you actually use it? I know a lot of people, they're out here forecasting because a lot of people, that's what they're going to respond to. But the truth of astrology is not about forecasting. It's really about being so clear where you are rhythmically in resonance and cycles that it's about you. It's about you. And like when you understand yourself, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit.
It gives you the game plan for understanding. It's a cheat code.
Yeah. It really is. It really is. So these are the things we like to talk about. Like what other, we have a lot of other cheat codes. We do meditation. There's some like incense and stuff that we like to use on a regular basis. If you're curious about how we fit that into our life and our how we live day to day to create a home that feels generative, that feels alive. I do use some feng shui. So if you want to talk about that, if you want to talk about timing for your business so that you're launching at prime times.
What dates are the proper dates for me personally?
It's nice to know. And if you want to know how to tell a team how to be organized in that, there's a way to do it. There's all, yay, worlds of API and all the AI, and too much on my website. But AI is really a great thing when the person that knows what's going on is telling you what to do. Like I've seen it mess up in the general stuff. Like it really does mess you up, especially if you get into Gene Keys. But it can be very effective if you've built in the formula so it's looking in the right places for the right things. So people who know have built better apps than that that your team can use to make plans and all of that kind of thing for your schedule, for your events. So if you want to know more about that, let us know. We talk about like sacred energy, like as masculine and feminine. How does that build and support teams and team culture? We talk about sales. We do talk about sales, about like essentially how to be and sell something without this being slimy or yucky or icky.
Yeah, I've actually created a program called the Conscious Seller System. We'll talk about how that works. Part of what we do here is geared toward
you being a
you can't sell anyone until you're sold on yourself. So it's all part. The purpose of what we do is to help you be the best salesman to yourself first.
and you have to market
So you have to do
your own
programming in your own mind. Anything that
wanted to do.
inside of so
Yes.
be successful. Part of what we do
Here
is
is
giving you little sneaky tips in marketing, but
you have to market you to yourself.
Right. So yeah, we have something about working with the business of being you, like how you and your business become the force that will leave a legacy. Um, Also about supporting, other visions. If your partner or yourself, so your partner as the portal is part of what you have as your support system to create big and massive energy to create other things in your life. So there's always 1,000 ways that we have to approach this because there's so many hats that we wear to put our own work out there, to be unique and to build our own businesses, that there's a lot to cover. So if we can help you at all in that journey of taking up that torch of your own truth, your own vision, leading your world into greater understanding and accomplishment, then please do comment below, and we will see you on the next Diva and the Unk. So here we go. Don't forget, your voice is a portal. Use it with power.
your presence is the product. And it's of itself.
That's right,
Much love,
y'all.
y'all. See you next week.
Much love. See you next time.